Hey, alle sammen, and welcome back to another video. So, I posted a question on Twitter and on here asking if there were any questions about paganism or anything in general that anybody wanted to ask me. This was the response we got. Way to go. The one person The one person who did respond to me was at jquantipsy on Twitter, and he asked, what exactly is heathenry and what is the difference between it and the idea of paganism? So, instead of incorporating this into a montage of questions, I've decided to just do a video on this question because it's all that I've got to work with. So, simply put, heathenry is a modern recreation of the old religion practiced in northern pre-Christian Europe. So, the original heathens were those that existed about 1,000 years ago, and before.
The fuck?
In Anglo-Saxon England, in Scandinavia, in Germany, and Frisia. So the modern heathens are attempting to recreate these old practices, and there are a variety of names. For instance, there's Asatru, there's Vanatru, there's Rokatru, that just comes out of that. There's the Lokians, there is Norse pagans who just decide to call themselves Norse pagans. I use that as an umbrella term because it kind of just says what it is, like Norse paganism as opposed to like Celtic paganism. Because if I were to say to somebody who had no idea what Asatru was, oh, I'm Asatru, I have too many necklaces on, they'd be like, I'm sorry, but if you say you're Norse pagan, they'll be like, oh, like in the Marvel movies, and I'll be like, you're close enough, Chris Hemsworth is great. But at least you have, like, somebody has a foundation of what Thor is, and they're like, oh yeah! So yes, there's a bunch of different names for it. Germanic pagan reconstructionism, some people have Odinism as their thing, or some people just refer to it as heathenry and refer to themselves as heathens as opposed to Norse pagans, or what have you. So, the sources that a lot of heathens use for their reconstructionism come from a number of literary sources. For instance, there are the Icelandic Eddas and Sagas, which I have mentioned numerous times. The Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda are two of the, like, mainstay books that you will always read at one point or another. There's also Anglo-Saxon poetry that helps paint a picture of the practices of the time and the gods and the traditions. And while a lot of these sources do come from post-Christianization, they still paint a picture of the traditions that would have existed in the past, even though some of them, Snorri, have a bit of a Christian undertone to them in the retellings, especially in some of the translations of the Eddas, where you have Loki as I'm always come back to Loki. Loki is a demonic figure, an evil figure. He's very demonized, whereas it's my personal belief that he wasn't really demonized in the past because there wasn't a good and bad. Loki was a catalyst for change. He was a trickster figure. That does not mean that he is Satan. We're not going to talk about that. Loki is getting his own video that I'm working on currently. We're gonna get there, Loki, I promise. However, along with these sources, many modern heathens also create their own beliefs based on traditions they might have from their families, or just make up traditions. I know there are some people who work by themselves. They don't have a group of people to practice with, so they invent their own spins on different traditions so that they can practice them in a solitary way. We can't sacrifice goats. The next person who tells me I'm not a real pagan because I don't sacrifice goats is going to be sacrificed. Odin is gifting you to me if you tell me this. Like, I don't know where you live, where you can just slaughter goats on your property, but I think my neighbors would probably call the cops. So, the gods in heathenry. Obviously, the gods are from the northern pantheon, and many of them are known today due to pop culture. And this is another thing that I wanted to talk about in a video, I guess I will talk about it here, is that a lot of people who come to Norse paganism via the Marvel movies or the comic books, I don't think that invalidates anybody. Especially when it comes to Loki. A lot of people like to look at people who work with Loki and go, oh, you like Tom Hiddleston, I see. Yeah, he's good eye candy, but that's not the deity. No, it's not. And there are pop culture pagans, I'm not going to talk about them in this video, but they're doing their thing, just leave them alone. Don't hate on them. It's not your practice, stay out of it. Jim, stay out of it. I think that if that introduces you to a pantheon, that doesn't make it invalid. If you come to the... I don't know why I'm talking like this, like I'm William Shatner or something. But anyway, if you come to Norse paganism because you were introduced via pop culture, or even via God of War, or now Assassin's Creed, but I think a lot of people are going to be interested by the lore and by the gods, and if they want to educate themselves on the actual lore and then, you know, grow into the practice, then you shouldn't be invalidating them. If they ask stupid questions, It's not a stupid question. You were there once. You were once like, what the hell is a pro-Zeta? I don't know. That was you. That was me. That was everybody who started out. And the truth is, those questions aren't stupid. So regardless of where you come from, there's no stupid questions, and it's always a valid path because it's your path. It's how you got there. You're doing your own thing. Good for you. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Anyway, that went off on a tangent. Back to what we're talking about. So heathenry itself is quite possibly described best as a living religion. It is not set in stone. It is constantly evolving based on archaeological evidence and historical texts, literature, things like that. It is also constantly changing based on personal interpretations of things. So not every heathen is going to have the same practice. They're not going to believe the same things. I've spoken with people in forums. It was a question about how the gods, if the gods are actual beings, actual individual beings. And there was people who were going back and forth about, oh, the gods are like facets of different energies and a bunch of different interpretations of what the gods exactly are. So that just goes to show that there are different ways of even seeing the gods and what they are. So there's no one size fits all. It's kind of, there's a bunch of different amalgamations of practices and beliefs, and people come to their own conclusions. That's another way that it kind of differs from Wicca, whereas in a lot of Wiccans that I've talked to believe in a central goddess. A lot of heathens are like hardcore polytheists, so they do believe that the gods are separate beings as opposed to facets of one, although there are exceptions, as I said. But this is just a baseline of what heathenry is described as being. At a textbook level, if you were to write a textbook about it, which I'm sure has been done, this is what you're going to get. Additionally, unlike Wiccans, a lot of heathens don't practice a form of witchcraft. There are a lot who do, but there are a lot who don't, and it's not necessary for veneration of the gods. While there is practices like Galdr or Seder, there are people who practice that, but it's not like you have to do this along the side worshipping the gods. No, it's not a thing. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who use tarot cards. Tarot cards aren't Nordic, but that doesn't mean you can't use them. Build your own thing because, as I said before, it's your practice and you can do what you want with it. Doesn't matter what Jim says. Jim, stop yelling at people. So generally speaking, heathenry is dealing with a modern reconstruction of the old Germanic pagan ways from pre-Christian Europe, whereas it differs from paganism, as paganism itself is kind of an umbrella term which encompasses heathenry. It also encompasses really the worship of any deities that are outside of the traditional Abrahamic faiths. So that is the main difference is paganism itself is an umbrella term, and heathenry is kind of an umbrella term under the umbrella term that describes a bunch of different practices. And again, it can differ via areas as well. Like talking to Icelandic pagans, you're going to have a lot of different ideas and different ways of doing things than an American Norse pagan, because, you know, we're in two different places. And again, that doesn't make it wrong, Jim. It just means that the things that we have here as opposed to there are different. The culture that we have here is different. We like Big Macs, trucks, and eagles. That's our thing. So really, that is the difference between those two. That is what heathenry is on a textbook level. And really, the term that you want to use is really up to you. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. If you want to use Norse pagan, if you want to use Asatru, if you want to use Vanatru, or Rokatru, just heathenry, Norse reconstructionist. It's really whatever term resonates most with you. And yeah, I mean, if you just want to call yourself a pagan in general and just mash a bunch of different pantheons together. I know people who dabble in the Roman pantheon and the Norse pantheon and the Celtic pantheon. It's really just whatever deities resonate with you and that you want to work at building a relationship with. And again, if Jim wants to come in your DMs and slide up and be like, no, you're doing it wrong, just block Jim because Jim's an asshole. I don't know who Jim is. If your name's Jim and you're not an asshole, I'm sorry. Sorry, Jim. So, I hope that this video has been insightful. I just kind of threw it together. I wanted to wait a couple days because I wanted to see if I had any more questions. I didn't. But, if you are watching this video and you have any questions or anything you want to have me clarify, because I know in the comments, a lot of people ask me questions, and I usually just type out an answer. But if you have any questions that you would like to see me do another video on, feel free to leave those in the comments, and I will make a compilation of the questions, and I will answer them for you. So, until the next time, heathens, pagans, bystanders, interested parties alike, goodbye.